Hi and welcome back to my channel. If you're new to this place, I'm Øystein and I talk about my reading experiences and books. And in this one, I'm talking about Carsten Jensen and We the Drowned. The reason why I picked this one up now is because one of my best friends has this one as his favorite novels of all time, and I thought it would be interesting to discover what my friends are actually reading. The second reason is probably that I had good experiences with historical fiction before, and I thought it's time to do another one. And lastly, I feel obliged to read chunky Scandinavian novels. And this is about as chunky as they get. But it looks bigger than it actually is. It came out in 2006 and it's about 700 pages. It's written by Carsten Jensen. He is a Dane and he comes from this island called Ærø, and specifically a town or a city called Marsdal. And this book is all about that place and everywhere else. Before I continue, I have to mention that this book review will contain spoilers. The story starts in 1848 and it's all about sailing ships. The people that sail them, the people that want to sail them, and the people that are sad that people sail them. So this Danish place is close to the German border, and in Germany we meet this guy called Lauritz Madsen. He's of course a sailor, and he has been captured whilst fighting the Germans. But he manages to escape and he goes far away. And the next character we meet is Albert, and he is Lauritz Madsen's son. He goes out sailing trying to find his lost father, because when he got away he just didn't return home again. I sort of feel like the rest of the novel has the same theme, because there are 4 generations, they all have connections to sailing, and the book very much focuses on sailing itself, even though this is a character-driven novel. Being character-driven, I found it to be an uneven distribution of characters that I really connected with. I was not sure when starting to read this novel who was going to be important to me, and when finishing it I also felt like Albert, which is the second one of the characters, got a lot of attention, and he was the one that I really connected with because he really had a story, but the other ones sort of just were a bit in the background and didn't take up that much space in the book or in my heart. In many ways I felt like Albert was one of the few that actually had a character development. You could follow him through his whole life, that of course helps. But the characters on his sides were not that well explained, and they had their traits, but you really didn't get any juice out of it. Take Albert's father for example, because when I started reading it, it felt like the book wanted me to focus a whole lot on Albert's father, but at the same time it wasn't written all that much about him after a short while, and the things written about him made me feel like he was a bit crazy, but that's about it. After a while, kind of a douchebag. But then again, there wasn't a lot of context. It was just him being a douchebag without any further explanation. It sort of reminded me when I read Kirsten Lavansdatter by Sigrid Undset, because in that novel there were a whole lot of names in the beginning and then it fizzled out, luckily. And with this one as well. I should mention that I'm terrible with names, but I still think that things could be a little bit clearer. Something I would wish for the characters sort of ties in together with me feeling that there lacked some development in many of them, and that is that I wish they would be more lovable, but that's probably because I didn't feel a whole lot of connection with them. Albert was one of the most lovable in the story to me, probably just because I felt like I knew him a bit, and I struggled to do so with other ones. And I know that if many of these people would be very lovable, this might not be the most historically correct novel, because the environment they're all in is tough. The book is called We the Drowned. The kids in school get beat up, people are unhealthy, dying. It's not a happy place. But it's not like this novel didn't have its moments when it comes to love and affection. Take 2 parents that were kind to their child, for example. That's all we needed. They were kind to their son, and it sort of lights up the book a bit in all of the sadness. So when looking at this novel, I thought this book will have a very slow pace, and I felt like it was right. And I see that many of the people that have rated this on Storygraph also says it has a slow pace. And I'm not the biggest fan of slow-paced books, but there is a lot of things happening at the same time that I feel like it focuses a lot on detail. Just the amount of ship types named in this novel is astounding, and I felt like I learned a whole lot of things. Of course, I read this one in Norwegian, so I'm not going to try to translate the names of the different types to you, but I found myself going on Wikipedia a whole lot. Also just the places they visit and looking up the history of the different dogs. I found it very fascinating. So even though it's slow paced, it helped me along the way that I could go on Wikipedia and look up things, and it made it feel like this moved a whole lot quicker. But of course, it's not all about the ships, it's about tying the ships and the people and the place together with the times. So it spans over 4 generations and also 2 world wars, because this book ends in 1945. One thing I noticed was how in line with the Scandinavian way of thinking this author seems to be, because when he tried to describe what happens in the stock exchange, it doesn't seem like a happy place. I don't think the stock exchange in general is mentioned with one good word in this one. And I found that to be a bit funny, because I don't really think about politics when reading fiction that much. But in this one I found him to be a bit preachy. Throughout the book it felt like he said the old ways are good and decent, whilst the new ways are dumb and stupid. Except from beating the kids. That seemed to be a good upgrade. But I don't mind these things as much. It's not important to me. I just enjoyed reading about ships and learning something, because that's what makes historical fiction fun. And Jensen writes about this in a very passionate way. And I know, after googling some, that people that like sailing ships really also tend to love this novel. And I understand why. And I have no clue, but reading this novel, it feels like it's historically correct. But who knows? A fun side effect of reading this novel, and I have no clue if this pertains to other languages, but in Norwegian we have apparently a lot of words and expressions that comes from sailing ships or the sea or sailing in general that I didn't know of, even though I use these expressions weekly. And it's not like they're explained in the novel, it's more like you read a word in the context and then suddenly it appears, to me at least, that, well, now I know. So that was fun. Now I actually can explain why I say things I say. Something I didn't enjoy as much in this one is when it started to be more about the magical realism, when Albert started dreaming about ships sinking and predicting the future, because it felt kind of desperate. And I do not like mixing magical elements into ordinary tales. I'm pretty certain I've read many books before where this has happened, but I hadn't noticed. But in this book it was too much. But I felt like they stopped right before it could have been way too much. So if the things happening in the dreams actually had consequences outside of it actually just happening and then be over with. If that made sense. Also, there were too many lucky coincidences. So when people met on faraway islands, or people met in the middle of the sea because their ship was about to go down, there were just too many of them. But also this book has this feeling about being quite down to earth, gritty, and just describing things happening. But suddenly it's all about he appeared and she appeared and wow, what are you doing here? I thought I'd speak a little bit about the ending because it frustrated me a bit. And not just the last couple of pages, I thought this novel should have ended with Albert dying. He was the central figure, and the people that he left us with weren't as great or exciting. Of course, his grandson is a big part of this novel, but I just don't feel that it became as great as it did with Albert. Also, I felt like the author needed to write about the Second World War, even though we didn't need to read about it. Maybe it has to do with the transition from the sailing ships towards other kinds of ships and the importance of sailing during the Second World War. There's a lot of interesting things about it, and I'm certain that I would have liked it better if he just wrote a novel about the Second World War and the sailing, instead of doing this. Also felt like the pace was turned up a bit, and I usually like that, but it felt like it didn't fit in with the rest of the novel. So that's about it. I know that when I talk about novels that I didn't absolutely love or hate, it sounds more like I dislike them than I like them. But that's not true. I really like this novel. It was quite the adventure and such an interesting story about sailing ships that it is one of those things that I didn't think I would enjoy as much as I did. And again, it really shines through how much Jensen has to love doing the research, love the topic and the place. And without it, this novel wouldn't be as great. Would I wish for a higher pace and a closer connection to the characters? Of course, but I knew what I was getting myself into. So have you read this one? Please comment below if you'd like to share your thoughts. And if you like this video, you would probably like many of my other ones as well, so please consider subscribing. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!